Hi everyone, I'm Taylor.
And I'm Jonathan.
And we are here for the first of our monthly member Q&A. So this time we've asked for people to submit any questions that they have related to COVID. So I've got them here and we are going to get started answering them. The first one, what are some good stretches or exercises to do for my lower back after sitting all day? So there are going to be a few different options that we're going to demonstrate here. But it's important to understand what could be causing the lower back pain, right? Because it's not that there's one inherently superior posture. It's just that oftentimes we end up getting a lot of discomfort because we don't move around enough throughout the day. So first thing that I would say is try to vary your position, especially if you're working from home. Set a reminder, set an alarm to get up and move every hour or so for 5 minutes and just get moving. Another option is to switch from standing to seated, because neither of them is better than the other. It's just that when we spend too much time in one position, our body starts to adapt to those loads at the cost of our mobility and usually coming along with some discomfort. But in terms of actual exercises that you can do, we have the cat camel, or cat cow as some call it in yoga, which is going to help us to learn how to segment along the entire spine. The goal being that as we learn how to control our spine more, we can take some of the load off of the lumbar or the low back, where we usually hold most of our tension, and start to distribute it, which will probably dissipate some of that tension. We can also do a little bit of spinal rotation and twisting, again just with the idea of kind of decompressing the vertebrae, giving ourselves some space, and then connecting that with some breath work, which we'll probably get more into in this. But we'll leave it at that. On to number 2. I don't have a lot of weights at home. What can I do to keep up my strength? What are you?
Alright, so for strength training at home when you don't have a lot of weights, there's a couple things that we can do. The first thing I would recommend is trying to work with isometrics, which is basically holding a muscle time under tension in a static position. So if you saw the workout of the week from this past week, you'll see a couple demonstrations of isometric exercises. Basically, you want to hold that position for about 20 to 30 seconds. Do that for multiple sets. You just really want to keep constant tension on that muscle. Another benefit to working in isometrics is that we get to work on stabilization of our joints. So the joints above and below that muscle that you're working on, you can continue to strengthen those ligaments and those tendons. The second thing that we can do is just vary our tempo. So if you're doing a bicep curl, for example, and you curl up for a second and then you drop for a second, that's a 1-1. What you can do instead is you can be explosive, working up power, going up for a second, and then do a 3-second negative. Just to keep that muscle under tension, you want to just kind of stress the muscle as much as you can with the lighter weight that you normally wouldn't do with a heavier weight. And the third thing that I would recommend is just, do more endurance training, up your reps. You want to accumulate volume over time in your workout. So because you're not lifting with heavier weight, if you're working with lighter weights, just really up the range to like 15, 20, 25, maybe even 30 reps, depending on the exercise. And you're going to feel a fatigue in your muscles that you're just going to feel just like you worked out with heavier weights.
Right, because the idea is that you can always find a way to progressively overload. So it can be changing the tempo, it can be changing the weight. If you don't have an option for weight, yeah, we find ways to make it more challenging.
Right.
Focusing on form. So, number 3, any suggestions on what I can do to lower stress? Really good question. There's so many different ways that you can approach it, right? But we do know that physical, mental, and emotional health are all intertwined. So I would say always starting with micro habits. That's one of my favorite strategies. And that's going to be creating a goal of a habit that's going to be so easy you can't not do it. So if you want to start running, but it's just always that first step, right? Getting out the door, starting to run, then make the habit or the goal be that I'm going to put on my shoes. And maybe I'm going to take a lap around the block. And then once you get going, as long as you've buffered the time, you're probably going to keep going because it's usually just getting over that initial hurdle. Or if you want to start reading, saying I'm going to read 1 sentence a day. And then of course you're not going to read just 1 sentence once you pick up the book. So then you're going to make that.
I'll read 1 sentence.
Okay. Well, most of us are going to continue, right? So paragraph, a page, and that's going to continue to compound, right? Because we want small successes that feed our positive mental attitude and kind of. So taking something that you really want to do, whether that be meditate, walk, read, connect with a loved one, something that makes you feel good, and you do that for only just for that reason and nothing else. That can really help to reduce stress, I would say. All right, so the 4th and final question we've got here. I gained some weight during these last few months. Any tips to help lose it?
Yes. So before we even look at food and diet, I would look really at your activity level. If you're watching this and you haven't even gone for a walk in the last couple months, start walking.
The video and start walking.
Yeah, start walking. everyone has a step counter, at least it seems, on their phone, on their watch, Fitbit. If you have something like that, look at how much you're actually moving around. Take that average and maybe up it by 1,000. Just the idea is just to kind of get moving, burn some calories that way. Second thing I would look at, if we're looking at eating specifically, is now that we're no longer in the office, or most of us are no longer in the office, it's time to look at when you start eating and when you stop eating. So at work, we have breaks, we have meetings where we're only given a short time to eat. At home, I can start eating at 6 a.m. and I can eat until 10 p.m. So what we want to do is I would encourage you to kind of mirror what you would do on a normal work day if you were at the office, kind of constrict that window of eating. It's like intermittent fasting in a sense, but really what we're looking to do is if you shorten that window, you're just gonna feel fuller quicker because you just don't have a whole 16-hour day to eat and kind of graze and grab all the food in your pantry. Second thing I'd probably recommend is probably up your water intake. That's just gonna give you a natural feeling of feeling fuller. Protein is another option you can go with. A lot of people are really deficient in the proper protein macro intake they should be taking. So address that. Try to have protein at every meal, whether it's breakfast, lunch, or dinner, or even snacks.
So yeah, and on that note, right, it's all about creating an environment that sets you up for success, because willpower is finite. So if I still have Oreos in my cabinet, even if I start out really strong, and I intend to do the intermittent fasting, or I have protein in every meal, even if I'm full, sometimes cravings are going to override that. So it kind of depends on knowing yourself, and then figuring out what you need to do, removing obstacles, removing temptations. So really throwing stuff away that would otherwise tempt you when you're on the right track. Because inevitably, after a long day or a stressful meeting or something, kids screaming in the background, something is going to trigger you to go and grab that. And if it's not there, you'll find another option.
And to your point, we all have our vices when it comes to food or adult beverages or whatever sugary drink that we have. So we kind of know during the last 9 months or last 6 months what have been our go-tos. And we know, like, if I were to ask every single person to think of something that they know they should not be eating as much of, they would have something in their minds. So you could also, just as an easy hack, just look at what you're eating or drinking and be like, you know what, this week I'm gonna cut that in half. Just micro habits as you were building on will pay long dividends in the long run. So those would be my tips for that question.
Right. And yeah, finding high volume foods, things that are going to keep you, adding more protein because you'll get more satiated, but also having like more veggies, more fruits. You're going to find that you can eat more of them. They're going to not.
No one likes fruits and veggies.
I like fruits and frozen grapes. That's what I've been eating because I can't eat ice cream right now.
Frozen grapes. Okay.
Don't knock it till you try it.
Fair enough.
And I think that wraps up today's Q&A. So we will be back in a month. You can always submit questions. You can request themes for us to cover. Even if you don't have a bunch of questions for one topic, you can say, hey, I want to hear more about this. We'll do some research and we'll come back to you all. So thanks everyone for your questions.
Yep, we'll see you guys later.
Stay tuned.
I'm actually not doing as bad as I thought I would.
You're doing great.
Oh, thanks.